Have you ever felt like you're at war with yourself? Like no matter how hard you try, how much good you try to do, how much you try to learn, how much you try to implement, you end up in the same spot. You end up doing the things that you didn't want to do. You end up back in that conflict state where a part of you wanted to be so much better, a part of you wanted to be so much healthier, so much more productive, so much more just better in every way, but you felt held back. You know, and the harder you tried, the worse it kind of got. And the more you tried to do right, the less you actually did. You're not lazy or broken. You're just stuck in a loop cycle. And that loop cycle is the paradox of self-help. The backwards law of effort states that the harder you try to get what you want, the further away it will be from you. It's kind of like when you're so scared of something that you manifest that fear state. You know, you're so scared of coming across weird to that girl that you end up acting weird because you're so scared of being weird, and you manifest the thing that you were scared of in the first place. And also, this self-improvement idea of trying to be better, of trying to be someone different, implies that we ourselves are broken and that we need to change. The part of us that wants to change, that wants to be better, that wants to try and fix ourselves, is the part that needs healing and is the part that needs to change, paradoxically and ironically. Because if we're always going around with this mindset of I need to change, I need to do something different, that's the part that's keeping us dissatisfied and that's at war with the other parts of ourselves. The reason you want to be better is the reason you aren't. In society, we're told what to do, you know, be more productive, be smart, you know, be social, do all these things, have lots of money, be rich, love yourself, hustle. And a lot of these things kind of contradict, you know, be kind, but put yourself first, be rich, but be happy. And it's difficult to know what to do or what we should be doing when we have all these different voices that are blocking our own internal one, you know. And there's so many choices and it's so overwhelming that whatever we choose to do just feels wrong. It feels like it's the wrong choice, you know. It's like, oh, I was kind to myself, kind to others, but then I didn't actually put myself first. I wasn't actually kind to myself, you know. It just feels like whatever you do, it's just the wrong thing that you're doing. You know, online we see Instagram models that are just edited to look perfect, to look so perfect, to look exactly perfect, and that's not what we see in nature. That's not how we see ourselves. That's not how we can be, and it's setting unrealistic standards. And then there's other self-help YouTubers that are telling us all these kind of things, you know, do this, do that, you know. And if you're not waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and doing this morning routine, then you're wasting your life, or you're losing health, or you're gonna die earlier, or you're not a cool person, or whatever. And then there's like the red pill kind of manosphere area where it's like, yeah, you just have to be a man, you just have to do the work, and if you're not doing the work 24/7, then you're not really a man. You gotta be a man. Rest is for pussies, don't be a pussy. Nobody wants that. You're not gonna get pussy being a pussy. It creates this pressure on us to always be improving. And to have this kind of mindset, we never have peace. We're never happy with what we have. We're never content with what we have. And all of these voices just come across over us, and we end up stop listening to our own voice, our internal voice of what we want, or of what is actual valuable to us, and we choose others' ideas of success over our own. And this disconnect from who we are, what we want our lives to be, which is the most important thing, just creates this guilt and shame, because there's this internal sense lying deep within us. There's just this little voice saying like, oh, we want this, we love this, but then other people have said, no, this is bad, or this isn't good, and it creates guilt and shame inside of us rather than exploration and curiosity, which is what we should be approaching the world as. Instead of accepting ourselves and what we want, we judge. Why am I so tired? Why am I so lazy? Why can't I just be better? Why can't I just get myself to do the things that I want to? This suppresses our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts. And when you suppress, these things don't disappear. They actually build and grow. And that sense of dissatisfaction that comes within us, you know, we go to escape because we feel so dissatisfied. We're so caught between these two different things, these ideals of what other people want of us, of society, of the people that we like, our friends, family. And then we escape, you know, whatever your poison is, whether it's like shopping, even working too much. Something as positive like working too much can be an escape if it's done with the wrong intention. You know, alcohol, porn, shopping, video games, binge watching, binge eating, all these kind of things. You know, in our society there's so many choices, there's so many easily accessible things to just numb ourselves down and to keep us in this state, to be sacrificing ourselves for other people's ideals, for external ideals. And with this, I just want to point out, it's not what we do that's important, but why we do it. Intention is everything. Video games, for example, aren't inherently bad, but since we label on them, we create greater conflict within ourselves. And like I said, you know, even overworking, you know, when trying to numb, avoid, or hide our inner thoughts, our inner feelings through these kind of things, even productive things like working and stuff, can become toxic. And for me, I had this great conflict with video games because growing up, I loved them. I played them from a very young age. You know, lots of my friends played them. I loved watching them play them. And I loved watching my dad play them as well. You know, like for me, that was a big connection thing to other people. And, you know, growing up, it was probably one of the biggest things growing up for me. And that's kind of stuck around as well. I just love the problem solving, the exploring the new worlds, figuring out strategies, trying to win, the connection with other people, and the exploration of new worlds. But it was very limited for me. You know, I had strict kind of rules around technology especially. And, you know, this kind of created this guilt or shame, you know. So I would hide my DS or iPad underneath my pillow, in my pillowcase, or underneath my bed, and then play it at the night because I had troubles with insomnia and going to sleep. And, you know, to get away from that discomfort, to get away from the stress of having to be something else that I didn't want to be, rather than allowing this exploration of video games in a healthy way, you know, I would use it as a crutch because it felt like it was a shameful, toxic, kind of bad thing to do, you know. And growing up to believe that gaming was lazy, weak, or immature, just all these labels put onto it, all these judgments just created this further disconnect, you know. Even though it had become such an important part of my childhood and growing up, I didn't have a healthy relationship with it. And so I would judge myself and really harshly criticize myself for playing them when I did, because I was expected to succeed and to do so well. I was expected to be so much, you know, if only he implied himself, he would be so great. And when people tell you that, you just feel even worse. And that doesn't actually, for me, that didn't inspire me to act to change, because it just drove me back to video games. So I'm like, oh, well, if I'm just wasting my time, then I may as well do it with video games or whatever, because that's what I want to be doing. And it made me realize, and didn't make me realize, when I was in this state, I thought that if I wasn't working hard 24/7, if I wasn't doing all this work, then I was a loser. You know, I couldn't have any time for rest or any time to do any of the things that I wanted to do. And this created this black or white thinking, this all or nothing, this like strict line, you know. And for self-improvers, this is like good. It's like, oh yeah, you're either doing it all, you're doing all the work, or you're not. But we don't see behind the lives of them. Like, YouTube is just like this portrayal of people, and if people are going to get more clicks from being black and white, then that's what they're going to do. You know, the more contrasting, the more extreme it is, the more clicks and views that it gets. And this is okay for social media and for gaining social status and followers and that kind of thing. But for actual real life, it's very, very dangerous, you know. It caused in me a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of inconsistency, because I would try and force myself to work so hard, and then after working so hard, I'd fall back and then go on a binge gaming, binge eating kind of session, you know. I just bounced between the two extremes, you know. I was constantly at war with myself. I had bouts of like intense discipline where I was like waking up at 4 a.m, taking cold showers, doing Wim Hof, juggling the ball 200 times, and then doing a workout before I go to work, and then coming back and then doing a soccer session, and then dieting and eating and all that kind of stuff. But it was never consistent. It never stuck around for more than a couple weeks or a couple months if I could keep it together. And I never felt happy doing it. I never felt satisfied doing those kind of things. And eventually I would collapse and just end up spending my whole days just gaming, binge eating, junk food, and feeling really bad, you know. Never consistent, never at peace. And I thought that I just needed more discipline, that I could just will myself through it, that this was the problem that I just needed to crush through and go straight through, rather than find another way around that was more sensible. And what I actually needed was integration between the different parts of myself, the different desires in myself. And when I stopped fighting myself, when I stopped being at war with myself and trying to think in black and white terms and just doing one thing, either being super disciplined or like being a super loser. Super disciplined, super loser. When I stopped fighting myself, I moved forward. And these days, and even in the past, when I've realized that I've been the most happiest, is when I've got up early-ish, and I do the work that I need to do first. You know, I do the soccer workout, I do a proper workout. I do whatever work I want to do first, and I make sure that I tick it off, you know, workout, soccer, diet, play music, for example, write the scripts for these videos and record them. When I do these first, my life feels so much better, and then I can spend the rest of the day just resting and relaxing, you know, whether that's watching a show that I want to watch, catching up on movies, or even playing video games. And I don't judge these things as bad, because I've done work in that day, and this is a more consistent and realistic way to go, you know. I end up growing more because I'm not burning out. I'm way more consistent, way more happier. You know, I wake up and I'm actually looking forward to the day more than I'm like dreading it, you know, because either it was just this intense binge of gaming which just felt so shit, it just felt so draining, I felt so disgusting because I wasn't making any progress on myself, and it felt really unfulfilling. Or I was in the other extreme of just being way too disciplined, that it was just like, really, do I have to go through this again day after day? And just integrating these two things, you know, I enjoy life every day so much more. It's so much more sustainable, I'm so much more productive. And this actually aligns with the dopamine kind of thing, where you have the most dopamine stores at the start of your day, and if you do something like video games or watch porn in the first thing or early in the morning, that's going to deplete your dopamine levels, and then you're not going to be very motivated or feel like doing much of the things you want to do. And if you don't understand this, then try or just look back on the days where you've video gamed or whatever first early in the morning, and then how did the rest of the day go? You know, you kind of feel lethargic and you can't quite do the other things that you want to do. So doing the most productive things that you want to do, the tasks that you want to set to do in the morning is easier, and it actually feels better. And then the gaming afterwards feels so much better, and it's so much more rewarding. Even if it's like just a couple hours, or not even a couple hours, just like a game or two, it's just a whole world of a difference. And it makes it makes being disciplined so much more easier. And there's no fighting in your brain. You know, you're constantly kind of at peace, because it's like this one part of your brain's like, oh, we should be being productive, and it's like, yep, I've done that in the morning, I've checked off this and this, I've just got to do that and that. And then your other gaming kind of part's like, oh, but why don't we just like go play some video games, or, you know, watch a TV show, or just like chill out and eat some junk food or whatever. It's like, well, I've got to do this first, but after that, then we can do this and have free reign on that. And it's such a nicer, peaceful way to live. So if you've struggled, maybe you're not lazy, maybe you're just fighting yourself. I recommend trying to do productive work early in the morning, and then whatever you want to do later in the day after you do that. You're just going to feel so much more better, and you're going to create a life that aligns with your values, but also with your internal joy and sense of satisfaction. You don't have to be grinding 24/7 to be productive. And, you know, you don't have to completely cut out the things that you love, like gaming, for example, just because other people label them as bad. There's kind of this middle way, this middle pathway that you can take that is much more fulfilling and much more consistent. And if you look at other role models that you've had, you know, like pro athletes, pro soccer players, for example, they do the work, do what they need to do, then they rest. And then they what do? They play like FIFA or whatever, or they go watch a movie or do something with their girlfriends or whatever. Like, look at Become Elite, for example. Or, you know, even like great philosophers like Alan Watts, he had his smoking. And who else can I think of? You know, like, just, that's what makes us human. You know, we have all these different desires, all these different things. We're not black or white, we're not one thing or the other. And the more we try and label and judge ourselves and put ourselves into boxes, the harder it becomes. So we need to listen to ourselves and try and find this middle path between all the voices in our heads and all of the desires that we have. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.